Chalo. So in today's class, we will start with West Asia as we had done in the last class. That was a topic that we had studied. We had reached till Israel, if I remember correctly, right? And we had seen a question on UPSC from the UPSC on Israel. याद है आपको? ऐसा था? Okay. So then we had also started talking about India-Israel relations, and we had seen first of all, we talked about the history. ये भी किया हमने, including resolution 181. या ये किया ना हमने? And we had talked about different areas of cooperation between India and Israel. किया था हमने? What do you remember from your last class? Just look at your notebook. Yes, because ये तो ईरान के बारे में है, इससे आगे हम थे. Right? So we had talked about defense, agriculture, cooperation between India and Israel being main focus of the relation. Right? And then we had also talked about that in India there had been a long standing Jewish community. So thereby you will also find a large Jewish community in Israel which is of Indian origin. All right, Jews of Indian origin also are there in Israel. So people to people relations also we had talked about, right? So that is basically the answer to the question that India-Israel relations have acquired depth and diversity which cannot be rolled back, right? Now, what we need to add to that is very simple, that please write it down. So just that we can summarize it and then move on and talk about the Palestinian issue. So what we can write about India-Israel relation is that in recent times it has acquired greater political visibility. All right, greater political visibility, bipartisan acceptance on both sides, bipartisan acceptance on both sides, and also identification of the key pillars of cooperation in and also identification of the key pillars of cooperation in the areas of defense and security, in the areas of defense and security, agriculture and water, agriculture and water, agriculture and water, and more recently on technology and innovation, and more recently on technology and innovation, with the launch of India Israel Innovation Fund in 2018, with the launch of India Israel Innovation Fund for 2018. Changing the paragraph. This progress has been facilitated by the bilateral intent. This progress has been facilitated by the bilateral intent as well as changing regional scenario, as well as changing regional scenario. The 2020 Abraham Accords, between Israel, UAE and Bahrain, mediated by mediated by United States, not only opened the path for normalization, not only opened the path for in relations between normalization in relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors, Israel and its Arab neighbors, Israel and its Arab neighbors, but also paved the way for, but also paved the way for India, India to simultaneously engage, India to simultaneously engage with these sides, with these sides. It strengthened the scope for India's multi-alignment. It strengthened the scope for India's multi-alignment and resulted in resulted in the formation of I2U2 and resulted in the formation of I2U2, focusing on focusing on technology, focusing on technology, agriculture and food processing, focusing on technology, agriculture and food processing, as well as green energy transition, as well as green energy transition, as well as green energy transition. India has also since participated. India has also since participated in the multilateral exercise Blue Flag. India has also since participated in the multilateral exercise Blue Flag hosted by Israel. Hosted by Israel. In this way, in this way, India's India's engagements in West Asia have acquired have acquired a breadth have acquired a breadth extending from Iran on the Persian Gulf coast, extending from Iran on the Persian Gulf coast, the Arab Peninsula, the Arab Peninsula, Iran on the Persian Gulf coast, the Arab Peninsula, and Israel on the Mediterranean coast. Israel on the Mediterranean coast. In this way, in this way, India seems to be, in this way, India seems to be entering an era of a new West Asia approach, entering an era of a new West Asia approach. Now, after this writing, few more lines on India Israel, because people say that India and Israel, their interests may be similar. So we need to also summarize that in the context of India and Israel, the status of relations, in the context of India and Israel, the status of relations, in the context of India and Israel, the status of relations as seen in the high level visits of Prime Minister, as seen in the high level visits of Prime Minister Modi in 2017 and Prime Minister Netanyahu in 2018 are part of this new trend, are part of this new trend, are part of this new trend. However, are part of this new trend. However, India's support to the Palestinian issue, however, India's support to the Palestinian issue regional strategic equation, regional strategic equations involving Iran, regional strategic equations involving Iran and India's own quest to achieve defense indigenization and India's own quest to achieve defense indigenization are some of the points where differences may arise, even in the era of dehyphenation, where differences may arise even in the era of dehyphenation. In this context, the solutions are, one, working on a deeper defense cooperation through partnership, in defense manufacturing, under Make in India, in partnership in defense manufacturing under Make in India. 2, engaging bilaterally for gaining clearer understanding of each other's position, a clearer understanding of each other's position. 3, using platforms like I2U2, to put in place programs which are mutually beneficial, and aim at wider cooperation and aim at wider cooperation in technology, aim at wider cooperation in technology for climate change. Technology for climate change. Next point. Promoting cultural interactions as well as people to people ties. Promoting cultural exchanges as well as people to people ties. People to people ties. By doing this, both sides can ensure. By doing this, both sides can ensure the expression. By doing this, both sides can ensure that the expression I2T2, the expression I2T2 is realized to its full potential. The expression I2T2 is realized to its full potential. Right? What is I2T2? I2T2. Anyone? Have you heard of it? I2T2. ये सब जार्गन होते हैं किसी भी रिलेशन के बारे में, ये इसी तरह काम आते हैं, इसका इस्तेमाल इसीलिए हमने किया कंक्लूजन में. ये है I2T2. When Prime Minister Modi went there, Israel's Prime Minister said I2T2. मतलब हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर को भी पसंद है जार्गन्स यूज करना. इजरायली प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑल्सो नोज दिस. तो बहुत सारे जार्गन यूज हुए उस विजिट में, जैसे इंडियन टैलेंट टाइम्स इजरायली टेक्नोलॉजी इक्वल्स टू इजराइल इंडिया टाइज फॉर टुमारो. राइट? ये मतलब है इसका कि फोकस क्या होना चाहिए इस रिलेशन का, बिल्डिंग अ फ्यूचर बेस्ड ऑन कॉम्प्लीमेंटेरिटी. तो I2T2 का मतलब इंडियन टैलेंट टाइम्स इजरायली टेक्नोलॉजी. राइट? I2 India Israel, T2 talent and technology. Right? Talent and technology. So that is the meaning of I2T2. Right? वैसे ही Prime Minister Modi said I for I is India for Israel, and I with I is India with Israel. These are sentiments expressing the same thing. Use one, use other. That's why I keep on reading newspaper. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि this stops at here. This is simply, first of all, इस चीज़ को समझना ऐसे है कि jargons have a certain use. उनका इस्तेमाल कैसे कर सकते हैं towards conclusion. That's it. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि ये यूज किया नहीं किया तो पास और फेल हो जाएंगे. चलिए, let's go forward. Now, we have talked about a lot of things. We have seen this question. So, India's relations with Israel have of late acquired a depth and diversity which cannot be rolled back. Discuss. If you have not noted it down in the last class, please note it down. अगर note किया है तो कोई बात नहीं. Note नहीं किया है तो note कर लो, because I keep on repeating. Look at the question paper. Look at the syllabus. For any subject, ultimately you would have to study on your own more than you studied in the class. Classes जब भी खत्म होंगे क्लासेस तब आपकी पढ़ाई शुरू होगी, ये बात याद रखना. राइट? सो दिस इज वेयर यू हैव बिल्ड द ब्लॉक, बिल्ड द फाउंडेशन. नाउ यू हैव टू बिल्ड द बिल्डिंग. लिख लो क्वेश्चन अगर नहीं लिखा है तो. दूसरा, develop the habit of looking at the question paper. For the preliminary examination, last 20 years, at least last 20 years. For the mains examination, at least since 2013. All right? ये आदत जरूर डालें. दिस वुड बी बेनिफिशियल बिकॉज दिस वुड बेसिकली गिव यू फोकस. हमेशा दिमाग में रहेगा ना यूपीएससी किस तरह के क्वेश्चन पूछता है. सो देन व्हेनेवर यू आर रीडिंग समथिंग, फॉर एग्जांपल पीपल कम एंड आस्क हाउ शुड आई रीड न्यूज़पेपर. सो वंस you have done your own studies, you know what areas are important. So reading newspaper is based on one question, where will I use it? कुछ भी पढ़ रहे हो तो सोचने की जरूरत है कि ये मेरे कहाँ काम आएगा. So that is basically where you mentally are prepared. Otherwise you are reading newspaper, what if अगर ये पूछ लिया तो, what if एक तरीका होता है ना, what if अगर ये हो गया तो, this is a sure shot way of failure because this becomes uncontrollable. What if? पर दूसरा क्वेश्चन क्या है? The second question is where will I use it? Whenever I am reading newspaper, my question is where will I use it? Then you will understand a paper 1 में काम आ सकता है, paper 2 में काम आ सकता है, paper 3 में काम आ सकता है, ये या इस तरह की एरिया में काम आ सकता है. So that is basically what you have to do, and that is why you look at the question paper. Now let's look at the second part of this, which is the issue of Palestine. So first of all, some map. This is what is called, now you know, last class we have discussed it. What is this? This is West Bank. West Bank of what? Jordan River, right? This is Jordan River. So here you see West Bank is surrounded by Israel. This is Israel, all right? Then you have Jordan on the other side, right? Jordan River and Dead Sea, right? Dead Sea. So this is West Bank. In West Bank, you have one city called Ramallah. Ramallah is the administrative headquarters of what is called PA, Palestinian Authority, a proto-government of the Palestinian. मतलब एक तरह से local level पे Palestinians की government, with the idea that this would later become the government of the Palestinian state whenever Palestinian state comes into existence, right? So this is Ramallah. This is where Indian representation would also be there, Indian diplomatic representation to the Palestinian Authority, just as in Tel Aviv we have an embassy. And you see, this is Jerusalem. We have already talked about it. So Jerusalem is right here. This is Israel, this is West Bank, and Jerusalem is right here, which Israel claims to be its capital, but because of its cultural significance and cultural association, the Palestinians also believe and claim that this should be their capital, right? And what is the position of international community on this, including India? ये भी हमने बात की है last class में. What is the position of international community and India on this? Jerusalem. We have talked about it. 181. उसके बाद India का plan. So we have talked about, for example, you will remember peace process which started between between Israel and Palestinians. You remember? Madrid talks, Oslo talks, right? Then declaration of principle in the Washington DC. So since then the idea is that the solution to Jerusalem issue should be based on peaceful negotiations, and that is where its status should be decided. ऐसा international community का position है, including India. So this is something that you should know about West Bank, and this is Bethlehem. Another important site which is in West Bank. Bethlehem is where Jesus Christ was born, right? So again, this is an important location in West Bank, what you call West Bank, right? But this is where the Palestinian state is supposed to come up. There is this second area in this region. This is Gaza Strip. So Gaza Strip is surrounded by Egypt. This is Egypt. And you know that Egypt and Israel also have a border. And this is Sinai Peninsula. Was Sinai Peninsula in news recently? Kyo? Yes, because this COP27 at Sharm el Sheikh took place. And this is the Mediterranean, right? So it has a Mediterranean coast. It is surrounded by Egypt, and it is also surrounded by Israel, right? So the Palestinian Authority, or West Bank, is the seat of Palestinian Authority, and Gaza is where there is another Palestinian organization which is prominent, which is called Hamas, right? So Hamas is recognized as a terrorist organization by the US, and this is in always news because of the confrontation between Israeli forces and Hamas, right? Hamas is accused of launching rockets from Gaza Strip in the Israeli territory, and Israel's response is always in news in the context of humanitarian issues, human rights violations. So ये discussion हमेशा चलता रहता है. या फिर Iron Dome, the missile defense system, generally is in news. So generally this part, Gaza Strip, West Bank, Palestinian territories, Israel, have generally been areas of conflict. So that's why they generally are known, right, and lead to questions which are location based. So now what is India's position on the Palestinian issue? So we already know that A, India's traditional position has been support to Palestinian statehood. All right. We have traditionally supported Palestinians' right to have a state of their own. Just as you would recall from our discussion that when Resolution 181 was accepted by the UN, India also had presented another plan. India and other countries had presented another plan where they had called for a united states, right? A federated state, one state for Jews and the Arabs, right? And then later on, when 181 was adopted by UN, it became UN's position. So of course, India since then has accepted what is called two states, right? Two state solution. So in that context, it has supported Palestinian statehood, right? So this sentiment has been since the time of independence movement or national movement had this position, and then this was a stand that continued in independent India's foreign policy as well. Independent India's foreign policy as well. So as a matter of principle, India supported principles like national self-determination for the Palestinians. So that in that sense, it's an ideological point because we are supporting certain principles. Second, this support was also seen in the context of how the Palestinian issue was important in the Arab world, right? So that's the regional factor important in the Arab world, right? Arab world, largely Arab worlds. So our relations also traditionally evolved in such a way, energy, people to people ties with Arab countries. So in that sense, it is also reflection of how India's relations in the region evolved, right? Where the Palestinian issue was important in the Arab world for the Arab governments, and India's relations with the Arab countries developed specifically in the context of its energy interests and then later on its people to people ties or people to people interests as well. So that's part of India's traditional position. What has affected India's traditional position and what has been India's traditional position? In part, it was part of India's principles, and in part, it was part of the regional politics as it shaped out, right? So that's basically generally India's position. So thereby, the kind of role that India has played. So, for example, India has supported the Palestinian cause at international forums like the UN, right? So most of, or generally it has been the trend that India's vote have been favorable to the Palestinians at the United Nations, right? India consistently voted in favor of resolution which supported the Palestinian position or which were critical to Israel in this particular context. And then, for example, in 2011, India supported the inclusion of Palestine in UNESCO. All right, India supported the inclusion of Palestine in UNESCO. So, UNESCO provided full membership to Palestine. Palestinians had applied for membership of the UN, recognition by the UN, but there the issue did not gain traction. Why? Because generally the international community said that this is not how it is done. It should be ideally out of a negotiation between the interested parties. Israel, Palestine should negotiate, and that should lead to creation of a Palestinian state. So while the statehood bid of the Palestinian failed at the UN around 2011, it acquired membership of the UNESCO, which of course was not liked by Israel and US So they had pulled out of UNESCO, and UPSC had asked a question on UNESCO, right? And then what you will see is that India maintains diplomatic ties with the Palestinian Authority, all right? Diplomatic ties with the Palestinian Authority. So that's where you will see that even in the era of de-hyphenation, we say that India's position on Palestine is consistent. All right, India's position on Palestine is consistent. That's what the spokesperson of Ministry of External Affairs said, that India's position on Palestine is consistent. It is independent of any other relationship. So even now we say the same thing, that we generally have had one position on Palestine and we still have that particular position. It's just that we have separated these two relations. Our relations with Israel are on its own merit, our relations with the Palestinian are on its own merit. And thereby you will also see that if you look at India's support to the Palestinian, so that is reflected in the context of financial support to the PA, right? So we have provided almost every year financial support to the PA, which is Palestinian Authority. Okay? 10 million US dollars or 30 million US dollars. And then you will see, for example, in 2018, Prime Minister Modi visited West Bank. All right? He paid a visit to West Bank, to the Palestinian territories. And on that occasion, Prime Minister was awarded with the highest civilian honor of by the Palestinians, by the Palestinian Authority. And India also announced assistance at that point in time, right? Assistance for areas like education, IT, skilling. In these areas, India proposed programs, education, IT, skilling, and also establishment of a field hospital for children in Ramallah, right? So that is basically generally how you can identify India's position through these points: traditional position, then advocacy at international forums of the Palestinian cause, support at UNESCO, for example, then maintaining diplomatic representation with the PA, Palestinian Authority. That has happened after 1993, 1996 onwards. Then providing financial support to the Palestinian Authority, budgetary support to the Palestinian Authority. Then politically also there has been a visit to Palestinian Authority, and this was again just as when the Prime Minister visited Israel, it was a standalone visit. When the Prime Minister visited Palestinian territories, it was also a standalone visit, right? And he entered Palestinian territories from the Jordanian side. So that has also been there. And then we have also provided or announced in this time also assistance, program of assistance, which involves educational programs, skilling programs, specifically of women, and then IT program, and then also program for the construction of a children's hospital. So generally you will see that there is largely a humanitarian aspect to India's engagement with the Palestinians. All right, a humanitarian aspect has been consistently there. First expressed in the form of support to their right to have a state, and now expressed in the context of financial aid that India provides to the Palestinian. So similarly, what you will see is that there is an agency called UNRWA, United Nations Refugee Works Agency or Relief Works Agency for the Near East. So this was created for Palestinian refugees. So now we have increased our donation to this to 5 million US dollars. 2018-19, when the US had cut down funding of UNRWA, India used to provide 1.5 million US dollar, and now India announced that we will be providing 5 million US dollars to UNRWA. So that is also a support to the Palestinian cause, right? The support that India provides to UNRWA. So this basically is clearly something that you should remember as India's position and India's role on the Palestinian issue. And if you are interested, well, keep on reading. वो तो मैं मना नहीं करूंगा आपको, वो तो आपकी जिम्मेदारी अगर आपका ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टेड हो, पर ये पॉइंट्स आप याद रखेंगे इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, राइट? नाउ इफ यू सी, there is a lot of history here, and I would like to show you few points. For example, 2018-19, India increased its assistance to UNRWA from 1.25 to 5 million US dollar. So these are recent examples which simply say that at one level, India's assistance to the Palestinians has remained consistent, right? 50 million US dollars of disbursement to the Palestinian, health, agriculture, IT, education. So this is basically something that you will see, and this is basically India's position, if you could see, in terms of the statement of the foreign ministry after we announced dehyphenation. So of course there are questions, then what happens to the Palestinian issue? So what is position of India? If somebody asks you, this is the starting point. India's position on Palestine is independent and consistent. It is shaped by our views and interests and not determined by third country. This is a statement of dehyphenation. So even in the Palestinian case, the current era is era of dehyphenation. In the era of dehyphenation, this is the position. India's position on Palestine is independent and consistent. It is not shaped by it is shaped by our views and interests, not determined by any third country. And what is India's traditional position? India has traditionally supported an independent Palestine as part of a two-state solution. So ideal solution for India would be that Israel and Palestinians should talk to each other, and through that peaceful talk they should resolve their differences, and the outcome of that talk should be, what should be the outcome of that talk? Two-state solution. ऐसा India चाहता है. So this is basically as simply as possible telling this particular story, right? We had done detailed story at the beginning of the lecture, right? So that's where now let's look at a question. The question asked by UPSC in the preliminary examination, right? जब भी कोई कॉम्प्लिकेटेड चीज लगता है कि क्या हो जाएगा, यूपीएससी क्या पूछ लेगी, फॉर एग्जाम्पल वन कंट्री टू सिस्टम, राइट? इस तरह के टर्म्स के बारे में बहुत ज़्यादा इंटरेस्ट लोगों को आता है, तो इसका मतलब है कि यूपीएससी ऐसे क्वेश्चन पूछेगा, बिकॉज इट इज़ नॉट अबाउट इंडिया, right? The term two-state solution is sometimes mentioned in the news in the context of the affairs of Israel. Palestine होता तो वो सही आंसर होता, all right? तो ये basically gives you an idea of how UPSC covers things. पढ़ने के लिए तो बहुत कुछ है, but then you also have to balance the time, right? Now let's move forward and let's look at the जो मैप देखा है हमने इस एरिया का, मेडिटेरेनियन का मैप देखा, इंडियन ओशन, रेड सी एरिया का मैप देखा हमने, तो जो मैप देखा हमने वो कैसे काम आता है हमारे, मैंने कहा बहुत सारे लोकेशन बेस्ड क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं इस एरिया से. तो दिस इज वन क्वेश्चन आस्क्ड इन 2015. The area known as Golan Heights sometimes appears in the news in the context of the events related to, of course, the region, Middle East here, Middle East or West Asia as we call it. Middle East option है तो Middle East, ठीक है? क्या ये बहुत मुश्किल क्वेश्चन था? नहीं. Nobody is asking you to resolve कि ये इजराइल का है, कि सीरिया का है, कि इसका है, कि उसका है, बट किसके कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ये न्यूज में रहता है, राइट? सो दैट्स समथिंग दैट गिव्स यू एन आइडिया. अब देखो एक और क्वेश्चन, ये 2017, राइट? 2017. नाउ लुक एट दिस क्वेश्चन. पढ़ ले रहे हैं ना, सबको दिख रहा है? Mediterranean Sea is a border of which of the following countries? 1 Jordan, 2 Iraq, 3 Lebanon, 4 Syria. क्या क्या देखा है जब हमने when we have been in this region? West Asia में क्या क्या देखा हमने? We started with the Persian Gulf, we saw the Red Sea, we saw Suez Canal, Mediterranean region, right? So Mediterranean Sea, सबसे पहले तो एक क्लियरली आपको देख के नजर आ जाएगा कि कुछ देश है, आपको पता है कि वो मेडिटेरेनियन पे नहीं है. कौन से देश नहीं है मेडिटेरेनियन पे? जॉर्डन नहीं है, इराक नहीं है, राइट? सो जिसमें भी 1 और 2 ऑप्शन नहीं है वो आपका ऑप्शन हो गया, राइट? 3, 4. सो लेबनन, सीरिया, ऑफ कोर्स वी हैड सीन. इराक कहाँ पे? पर्शियन गल्फ पे. जॉर्डन कहाँ पे ओपन होता है? गल्फ ऑफ अक्वाबा, रेड सी, राइट? अलोंग द सेम कोस्ट लाइन जहाँ पे शार्मल शेख भी है, राइट? तो ये क्वेश्चन, तो इसलिए मैं कहता हूँ कि इस रीजन से बहुत मैप बेस्ड क्वेश्चन आते हैं जनरली। जो भी बहुत दूर हो गया वहां से लोकेशन बेस्ड क्वेश्चन जनरली यूपीएससी पूछेगा, एंड दैट इज अबाउट अवेयरनेस, राइट? विच वन ऑफ द फॉलोइंग कंट्रीज ऑफ साउथ वेस्ट एशिया डज नॉट ओपन आउट टू द मेडिटेरेनियन सी? ऑफ कोर्स जॉर्डन, राइट? सो वो मैप में हमने देखा। नाउ वी टॉक अबाउट India's look west policy as the last thing in West Asia. We have seen a lot of questions, and we have seen both subjective questions as well as objective type questions, right? We started with one question, answering one question when dealing with West Asia, question of energy security. We tried to answer question on strategic equations, trade, economic engagements, and also people to people ties. We saw the examples of our relations with countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Israel, and we also looked at the Palestinian issue, right? So now we have some idea of the region. What is your idea of the region of West Asia? What do you think of West Asia? Yes, the West Asian region is important for certain characteristics that it has. For example, it is important for energy supplies. But this region is also fairly diverse region in terms of different sets of countries being located here. It is also known for conflicts, and it is also known for the presence of external actors. So in that context, and it's also important because a large number of Indian people are present in this region. So in that context, this is a region which is important for India. What kind of region is this? West Asia for India, what kind of region is this? Extended neighborhood. All right. So then here are our interests, but here are also regional challenges. So in that context, what you will see is generally this term is used. Some people have been saying that India has a look west policy. Some people are saying that India's look west policy is in the making. Some people are saying that India should have a look west policy, right? Some people say look, think and act west policy. Some people would say link west policy. So all of them are referring to either India's interests in this region, how these interests would remain consistent, and how this region has challenges. So that's why people either are writing in the newspaper that India's look west policy is in the making, India's look west policy has been launched, India needs a look west policy, or India needs to consolidate the look west policy. So this simply means that there has been an idea that India should have a regional policy on West Asia. It's generally seen in the context of how we have a regional policy towards Southeast Asia. What is the policy towards Southeast Asia? Act East, look East earlier. So people say just as we have look East, we should also have look West, right? So that's basically the idea. So these arguments are generally based on one, that there are shared interests. All right, there are shared interests. What kind of interests? Mainly energy, economic, and people, but also combine all these, it becomes strategic, right? So look west policy is argued for in the context of the significance of relations with West Asia. This significance is due to the factors like energy supplies from West Asia. We have already talked about numbers. Economic potential of West Asia, we have already talked about numbers. People to people ties, and largely the strategic significance, including areas like dealing with terrorism and issues of maritime security. So why look west policy? If somebody asks, why should India have a look west policy? Would you be able to answer this question? Why should India have a look west policy? The simple answer is because West Asia is an important extended neighborhood, and there are vital interests of India to be defended in this particular region. So now this means any policy should focus on shared interest, and also it is made possible by familiarity. That there has been a long standing traditional cultural familiarity between India and West Asia, right? So it also rides on familiarity. Just as in the case of Southeast Asia, we have cultural familiarity. So that's prompted us to think of having a consolidated policy, right? So this policy is required or should be based on the familiarity, cultural familiarity between India and West Asia, the cultural capital that India enjoys in West Asia, right? It is also made possible by changing approach in West Asia, right? Not only India is looking west, but West Asia is also looking east. Changing approach means that there is a certain look east in West Asia also, where economies like UAE and Saudi Arabia, in course of their diversification, look at India as an important partner. All right. So that's basically also what we are saying, that there has been an acknowledgement of India's role. India acknowledges that some of these countries are important for regional stability. These countries recognize India's capability to contribute to regional stability. So this policy is also facilitated and called for by the changing approach in West Asia, whereby the West Asian countries have also adopted a certain look east approach. They are also looking towards India. In what context? A, countries like India and China being their largest consumers, energy consumers. This is where their markets are. B, a country like India or China also have significant growth potential, right? And a large market in traditional economic sense also. C, country like India also has acquired significant defense capabilities, so it can also be a security partner, right? And of course, there is a shared sense of Asian solidarity, that we are in Asia. And this becomes easier to understand in light of the fact that West Asia has suffered from external intervention. So they are friends with the US, but it is not necessary that they like US on everything. So they would also like to diversify their foreign policy, and when they would like to diversify their foreign policy, India is a partner for the future. Just as we had talked that Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, for example, identifies India as one of the prospective partners. So this is what we are saying, that there has been a changing approach in West Asia, where the look east approach there has been defined by the fact that the largest markets of West Asian countries are towards the east, such as India. B, the economic potential of India is also an attractive factor for West Asian countries. C, defense capabilities of India is also an attractive factor for West Asian countries. And D, the West Asian countries would like to diversify their foreign policy from the traditional West oriented one to now an Asian oriented one. All right. So this is why look west policy should be there, right? So what should be there in look west policy? So of course, what should be there? What we have talked about. So this is a summarization also. So there should be a focus on government to government interactions. Of course, this is what is going to guide the relations. We cannot say that we should first move towards people to people interactions. No, government to government. Governments are important in this region. All right. And we see some of these governments are monarchical in nature. So of course, government to government interactions should shape this region. Any examples? So any number of examples. For example, recently External Affairs Minister was in Saudi Arabia. All right. Recently it was in Saudi Arabia. Then you have examples of prime ministerial visits. Then you have example of formation of the Strategic Partnership Council between India and Saudi Arabia. If you would remember, in 2019, India and Saudi Arabia formed Strategic Partnership Council. Or upgradation of relation with UAE to comprehensive strategic partnership. So of course, these are government dictated processes. So government to government interactions, but also at the same time, what needs to be built on is the participation of the private sector. So greater interactions between the businesses. So for example, Reliance Aramco deal, of course that did not happen. Aramco Reliance deal fell through, but certainly Reliance Aramco or Ambani Adani, any private sector player going there, and their private sector players interacting with them, joint ventures, right? Dialogue between Chamber of Commerce here and the Chamber of Commerce there. Business to business interaction has to be the other focus. And of course, we need to strengthen people to people interaction, because that adds to. So we are saying that these three layers should be focused upon: government to government interactions to shape the direction, business to business interactions to ensure mutual benefits, and people to people interactions to ensure trust, greater trust in the relation. That should happen. And some steps would be helpful in this context. For example, a finalization of FTA with GCC. एक तो GCC से हम कर रहे हैं, दूसरा, in this context we are also negotiating an FTA with Israel. So these instruments would further allow us to move towards a consolidated policy, where if we have a FTA with GCC and an FTA with Israel, we already have covered two important aspects of this region. Secondly, consolidation of security ties, consolidation of security ties, right? Specifically in the area of maritime security, for example, meaning stability of the Indian Ocean region. Indian Ocean would remain India's focus. Partnerships in Indian Ocean would remain India's focus. West Asia is an important flank of that, right? So more number of exercise. So for example, what is the naval exercise with UAE? Anyone? Zayed, Talwar. What is the exercise with Saudi Arabia? Al Mohed, Al Hindi. All right, 2021, this also started, Al Mohed, Al Hindi. So these are, you see, newer starts which need to be consolidated upon. Consolidation of security ties, or rather larger strategic ties in the context of maritime security and also terrorism, specifically terror financing. These areas can be together addressed. Then third area is area of technology and climate change. For example, cooperation in the areas of renewable energy, water, all right, water conservation. So that these basically should be the themes of focus on this area for the future, where consolidation can take place, right? So I'll simply repeat what we have said so far, that for the longest time there have been talks about a look west policy of India in development, all right, or the need for consolidating a look west policy. It is based on shared interest in the area of energy and economy between India and West Asia. It is also supported by cultural familiarity between India and West Asia. And now it is stressed upon by the increased need for security and strategic cooperation, specifically in the area of maritime security. So going forward, the look west policy needs to be shaped by consistent government to government engagement to shape the direction. B, the business to business interactions, joint ventures and commercial deals to ensure mutual profit. C, people to people ties, people to people interactions to give a cultural basis to it and create trust. Going forward, working on certain major themes like finalization of free trade agreement with GCC countries and Israel would give further impetus to India's larger West Asia approach. Consolidation of security ties, specifically building on maritime security and countering terrorism can also consolidate such an approach. And another area of focus where there lies possibility of cooperation and also benefit for India is technology, specifically in the context of climate change. So thereby you will see that we may think of different forms of cooperation. For example, in the area of trade as well as technology and climate change, I2U2 can be an ideal platform. Two of our important partners are there, Israel and UAE, right? For both of them, we have seen the nature of the relation. So, ye hona chahiye. Now, what are the challenges? Is it going to be automatic? No, but there are challenges to having an approach like we have in look east. Look east जैसा होना मुश्किल होगा यहाँ पे because of certain difficulties. So what are the difficulties? One is of course regional rivalries. All right, regional rivalries between states. For example, Saudi Arabia and Iran. Right? Yemen is only an example where both of them are involved. But this is the rivalry, Saudi Arabia, Iran. Regional rivalries. Or traditionally we had seen Arab Israel rivalry. But now we see that, for example, the Palestinian issue, if it is not resolved, it may sooner or later cause another rift, the Palestinian issue. Right? Then you have conflicts and civil wars, right? For example, Yemen, right? In Yemen or in Syria. And then you have, as we say, rise of non-state actors like ISIS, right? So these would be consistent challenges with this region. And all this means that this region is not as cohesive as East Asia, Southeast Asia. All right, not as cohesive. And then lack of regional integration or regional unity. Of course, this is an example of lack of regional unity. We are not talking about a cohesive region as a whole, it's a diverse region. So that would be the challenge. Lack of regional integration means, for example, economic arrangements like common market. So for example, Southeast Asia acts as a common market. We have a free trade agreement with ASEAN. So that kind of integration is not here in West Asia. We are simply saying this, that it would not be easy to give shape to India's look west policy in the context of these kinds of challenges. So thereby what should be the solution? The solution is focusing on bilateral engagements to build trust, all right, and make progress. Bilateral engagements should be there to build trust, right? Working with a coalition of like-minded, example, यही एक example है हमारे पास, I2U2 नया हुआ है, we use it, right? Wherever progress can be made beyond the bilateral, we should make it, right? We should make it. And consolidation of India's capabilities domestically, meaning we need to be prepared militarily or economically. We need to consolidate our growth, our development first, and then we will be able to play a larger role in this region also, in the region of West Asia. If somebody is talking about look west policy, this is something that you can think of. या तो किसी का कहना है लुक वेस्ट होना चाहिए, किसी का कहना है तो कंसोलिडेट होना चाहिए, कभी लोग लिखते हैं कि लुक वेस्ट पॉलिसी बन रही है, राइट. सो फॉर एग्जांपल 2003-4 India had launched a free trade agreement negotiation with GCC. So then people wrote that India has launched a look west policy. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had given a speech in which he had said that just as we have a look east policy towards Southeast Asia, there is a need for a consolidated policy towards West Asia. When Prime Minister Modi visited UAE and Saudi Arabia, then also people wrote that the look west policy is in the making. मतलब ये term इस region के बारे में use होता है. The policy like look east is not there, right? It is not as consistently articulated. But then the use of the term has been there, and this simply has this very, very simple meaning, right? So now you can think of the answer to this question, right? The answer to this particular question. What particular question? This one. While India has pursued a look east policy involving Southeast Asia for a long time now, there seems to be a look west policy in the making involving West Asia. Take a statement which simply is saying that it seems that look west policy is in the making. Discuss in the context of India's engagement with West Asia in recent years, right? And that is the points that I've talked about, and the relations that we have talked about would form the basis of answer to this question. Please write this question and you may practice this question. And this also gives you a lens to think about West Asia, that A, you may think in terms of examples, particular relations, and B, you may think of the region as a whole with the help of those examples. Okay? So this is the question that you can think of. लिख लिया? Okay. Now you can try this. कोई क्वेश्चन आया था प्रीलिम्स में इस बार इस रीजन से? जैसे मैंने आपको पुराने क्वेश्चन दिखाए, तो आपने अपनी तरफ से देखा? 2022 में तो आप एग्जाम दे रहे हैं. There was a question on Levant. What is the Levant region? क्या है Levant region? Which region is known as Levant? Israel, Lebanon. Right. So Mediterranean जो coast है, starting with Turkey, some parts of Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and reaching till Sinai Peninsula. Right. This region is called Levant in West Asia. Right. So बहुत बढ़िया, आपको ये भी पता है, आपने देख लिया वो. अब हम क्या करेंगे? अब हम देखेंगे the next topic, which is diaspora. Right. So you already have a footing in diaspora. आपके पास डायस्पोरा को लेकर के नॉलेज है. Why? Because we talked about one such issue at in West Asia also. West Asia की बात की तो हमने डायस्पोरा की बात की. In what context did we talk about diaspora? UAE, Saudi Arabia, GCC countries, 9 million Indians living and working there. This is part of our diaspora, right? So diaspora is a recent topic added by the UPSC in the syllabus, and this is one aspect of our relation which goes beyond any particular country, right? So meaning now we are moving to, हमने जितने bilateral regional relations देखने थे वो देख लिए, and now we are moving to aspects of India's interests or engagement which go beyond the bilateral, right? So when we look at the diaspora, we need to simply ask very simple question. For example, what is the diaspora, right? What is this term diaspora? Then the nature of diaspora, looking at it in terms of categories in diaspora, right? Then significance of diaspora, what is the significance, right? And then we talk about other related questions, which is A, India's engagement, India's engagements with the diaspora, how India engages with its diaspora, how has it evolved, right? Then policies and schemes which are examples of how India engages with its diaspora. Then we can identify the challenges for the diaspora, or the challenges that we should keep in mind, and then possible responses in this particular context. That is basically what we generally want to know. What is the diaspora? What is its nature? Where is it? Right? What categories are used to define or explain it? Significance of the diaspora, how India has engaged and is engaging with the diaspora, what policies and schemes are there in this context, challenges for the diaspora, and if there are challenges, what can be possible response, what can we do. Now, if we start answering these questions, my first suggestion to you would be, if you have not seen the current affairs for the month of August, देखा है आपने? Current affairs for the month of August carries an item on diaspora in light of the report issued by Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs. So Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs की रिपोर्ट है डायस्पोरा के बारे में, अगस्त के महीने के करंट अफेयर्स में वो आया है, वो आपको जरूर देख लेना चाहिए, ठीक है? यू शुड मेक एन एफर्ट कि यू लुक एट इट. नाउ वी take this one by one. So when we say the Indian diaspora, what do we mean by this and what are the numbers? So first of all, diaspora as a term, जो ये खुद term है, it first originated in the context of the Jewish diaspora, right? Because the Jews were dispersed from what today is Palestine by the Romans. So they spread out throughout the world. They went to Russia, they went to Europe, they went to North Africa, they also came to India, they went to different Arab countries. So this is the original reference. But now diaspora is used as a generic term also to refer to people who are residing outside of their country of birth or origin, right? So अब ये generic term की तरह भी use होता है. So when we say Indian diaspora, what does this mean? This means this is simply a reference to people of India or of Indian origin living outside the borders of Republic of India. All right. So what is the Indian diaspora? This is a reference to people who are Indians or people who are of Indian origin living outside the borders of Republic of India. All right, living outside the borders of Republic of India, right? People of India, from India, people of Indian origin living outside the borders of Republic of India. So thereby, this is a large population which resides throughout the world. And you also understand that when we say Indian diaspora, we are including in the broadest sense, both people who are Indian citizens currently and also people who are not Indian citizens. इसको समझने में कोई दिक्कत तो नहीं है ना? A lot of people go outside and acquire citizenship of the other country. So thereby, what we see is that there are certain terminologies which are used in this particular context, right? So for example, diaspora itself is a term. Then you have the term PIO. Then you have the term NRI. Then you have the term OCI, right? These are terms which are seen in the context of Indian diaspora. So let's very briefly and very clearly delineate them one by one. PIO now is a very generic term. It does not have a technical meaning, right? It simply means persons of Indian origin, right? Anyone of Indian origin. So depending on the context, इसका इस्तेमाल जो जैसे कर रहा है उस हिसाब से इसका मतलब निकलेगा, बट ये जेनरिक टर्म है जिसका ब्रॉडर मतलब है एनीवन ऑफ इंडियन ओरिजिन, राइट? अर्लियर it used to be a separate technical category for people who are of Indian origin but not Indian citizen. So it was a card, PIO card. But there is no separate PIO card now. PIO card has been merged with OCI card. All right? 2015 to 17, in this time period, PIO card and OCI cards were merged. So OCI now, overseas citizens of India, right? Overseas citizen of India, OCI. Now this is a technical category for those, remember, who are not Indian citizens but of Indian origin. All right? Indian citizen नहीं है लेकिन Indian origin के हैं, वो अप्लाई कर सकते हैं एक स्टेटस के लिए जिसको कहते हैं OCI स्टेटस, राइट? OCI कार्ड. So this is basically in simple terms a lifelong visa category, right? लाइफ लॉन्ग वीजा कैटेगरी है ये. सो एक मतलब क्या है इसका? लाइफ लॉन्ग वीजा कैटेगरी, मल्टीपल एंट्री वीजा, एंड दिस बेसिकली इज अवेलेबल टू एनीवन हुज पेरेंट्स, ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स और ग्रेट ग्रैंड पेरेंट, right? If either of your parent, either of your grandparent or either of your great grandparent, इनमें से कोई भी अगर इंडियन सिटीजन था, so then you are eligible to apply for OCI card. All right? समझ गए आप इस बात को? So this is basically the differentiation. कि ऐसा नहीं हजारों साल पहले गए थे, साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में दिखता है कल्चर, तो वो डायस्पोरा का यूज उसके लिए नहीं होता, इतने पुराने के लिए नहीं होता. All right? So that's basically one idea that you get. This is about recent migration. So either of your parents, great grandparents, great grandparents, if they were Indian citizens, then you are eligible for the OCI card status, which is generally simply a lifelong multiple entry visa facility. Meaning now you are a citizen of another country, but once you are approved under the OCI category, you don't need to apply for visa all the time to come to India. You can come and go as you please, right? Then an OCI can have other advantages also over other foreigners. For example, an OCI card can be used to apply for a PAN card or a driving license, all right? Or educational facilities which are available to NRIs are also extended to OCIs. For example, ये कोटा होता है, बहुत सारे educational institution में NRI कोटा होता है. So these kinds of facilities, educational facilities available to NRIs, right? Investment in national schemes like National Pension Scheme, right? This is also open to NRIs. They open to OCIs. They can also open special bank accounts like the NRIs do in India. So that is also possible. The OCIs can also own property, but not agricultural property. That only thing that you should remember is that OCIs cannot own agricultural properties. They can own residential and commercial properties, but not agricultural properties. ठीक है? तो यही बस एक सिंपल सा आपको यहाँ पे थोड़ा दिखता है अंतर टेक्निकलिटी का. कि रेजिडेंशियल प्रॉपर्टी दे कैन ओन बट एग्रीकल्चरल प्रॉपर्टी दे कैन नॉट ओन. ठीक है. एंड ऑफ कोर्स द अदर थिंग दैट दे कांट डू इज दे कांट कॉन्टेस्ट इलेक्शंस, दे कांट वोट. ठीक है. तो वो एक अलग बात हो गई. बट जनरली दिस इज अ फैसिलिटी विच वॉज पुट इन प्लेस सो दैट इंडियंस कैन इंटरैक्ट विथ इंडिया इजिली. ऑल राइट. सो ये है. अब एनआरआई क्या है? एनआरआईज आर इंडियन सिटीजन्स. ऑल राइट. एनआरआईज आर इंडियन सिटीजन्स. ये इंडियन सिटीजन है. ये इंडियन सिटीजन्स वो है. अब इसको डिफाइन करने के लिए कोई लॉ नहीं है, but generally it is defined through tax classification. So if you have to be registered as a non-resident in India, you need to live outside the borders of India for now 245 or more days, right? More than 245 days, 246 or more days. Earlier it was 182, which was changed in the budget of 2021. ये जो नॉन रेसिडेंट के लिए जो क्राइटेरिया वो चेंज हुआ है 2021 के बजट में. सो हु आर एनआरआईज? पीपल फ्रॉम इंडिया who are living outside of India in a financial year. Financial year is between 1 April to 31st March. In a financial year, if they are living for more than 245 days outside the borders of India, technically they will be classified, they can be classified as NRI. एक हफ्ते के लिए नेपाल जाके आप NRI नहीं बनते हैं. ऑल राइट. या एक हफ्ते के लिए कहीं बाहर घूमने जाके आपका एक्सेंट चेंज हो सकता है, बट यू डोंट बिकम एन एनआरआई. फॉर दैट यू नीड टू लिव फॉर अ लॉन्गर पीरियड, राइट? 245 डेज. तो बात समझ में आ गई. सो जनरली दीज आर द टर्म्स दैट यू विल हियर. पीआईओ से नहीं डरना है. पीआईओ हैज नो टेक्निकल मीनिंग. इट सिंपली मीन्स एनीवन हु इज ऑफ इंडियन origin, persons of Indian origin, right? NRI, citizens of India living outside India for 245 or more days. OCI, available for people who are not citizens of India. It's a lifelong multiple entry visa category which is available to anyone who can prove lineage of India, lineage from India via either of their parents being Indians or either का मतलब समझ गए ना, दादा या दादी, माता या पिता, either of your grandparents or great grandparents. ऐसा है तो you can apply for OCI status. ठीक है. तो ये कैटेगरीज हो गई ऑफ पीपल. कम्युनिटीज, डिफरेंट डायस्पोरास, दे आर. इंडिया में रहना जरूरी था क्या? मतलब यही तो कह रहा हूं भाई, यही तो कह रहा हूं भाई. ग्रेट ग्रैंड पेरेंट पेरेंट क्या थे? इफ यू प्रूव योर लीनियज थ्रू देम कि ये सिटीजन थे इंडिया के, ऑल राइट. आप भी अगर सिटीजन थे वो बाद में जाके नॉन सिटीजन बन जाते तो आप पे भी अप्लाई होता है. पर हम कह रहे हैं पिछले 3 जनरेशन, ईदर ऑफ योर पेरेंट्स वर इंडियंस. चलो पूरी लाइन बोल देता हूँ. ईदर योर पेरेंट्स वर इंडियन, ईदर ऑफ योर ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स वर इंडियन, और ईदर ऑफ योर ग्रेट ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स वर इंडियन. इसके बिना क्यों कोई बेसिस कैसे बनेगा? मतलब किसी के भी दादा दादी, मेरे दादा दादी थे, अगर आपके दादा दादी हैं, आपके माता पिता हैं, ये मतलब तो नहीं हो सकता ना. वो तो आप सबके सबके होंगे. तो दुनिया में कोई थोड़ी ना कह सकता है कि मैं आके ओसीआई बन जाऊंगा. इंडियंस, राइट? इफ दे वर इंडियंस. इसके अलावा नाउ कम्युनिटीज, हाउ आर द कम्युनिटीज क्लासिफाइड? सो डिफरेंट डायस्पोरा कम्युनिटीज आर डिफाइंड थ्रू देयर ओरिजिन. ऑल राइट. कैसे बने वो? सो हम कहते हैं देयर आर 3 कैटेगरीज ऑफ डायस्पोरा: ओल्ड, न्यू एंड गल्फ. राइट? देयर आर 3 कैटेगरीज ऑफ डायस्पोरा: ओल्ड, न्यू, गल्फ. राइट? ओल्ड, न्यू एंड गल्फ. ठीक है. ये 3 डायस्पोरा है. नाउ द ओल्ड डायस्पोरा इज क्रिएटेड in the British period, right, through the practice of indentured labor. This is how this diaspora is created, through the practice of indentured labor, and it is considered to be the larger diaspora, matlab the largest category among these people, right? Because this is the largest, and of course, as the name suggests, the oldest. category of diaspora, long standing category of diaspora. The characteristic of this would be A, this diaspora has assimilated in their host societies, right? So they have assimilated. इतने साल कोई भी रहता है तो वो वहीं का हो जाता है, वो जहाँ पे रह रहा है, right? Assimilated in their host societies, and that's why you will see many from the old diaspora are in prominent political positions. All right, prominent political position में मिलेंगे. इसका ये characteristic ये है, right? So then what you will see is where is it spread. So if you see, this is spread through wherever British colony was there. So to some certain extent former UK colonies, right? But if you see where, so you have the concentration of Indians in the Caribbean islands, right? Caribbean islands. Then, for example, islands like Jamaica, right? Then you also have in this area Guyana, Suriname, Caribbean and South America, right? These kinds of places. Then you also have Indian Ocean region island states. Some you will find there also, where mainly the major example is Mauritius, but also Seychelles. All right, but also you will find such to be the case in Reunion Islands, right? But this is also because of the French connection with India, the Reunion Islands. यहाँ भी Indians हैं, right? And then you have in places like Sri Lanka, the Tamils whom the Britishers took to work in plantation agriculture. You have them in Myanmar. You have them in Singapore. And you have them in Malaysia as well. But you also have them in Pacific Islands. What Pacific Islands? So mainly the example is Fiji. All right. So this is what we can say is the old diaspora generally, right? Old diaspora, which is created through indentured labor system by the British. It is the long-standing diaspora, meaning the older diaspora in terms of its origins. And its characteristic is that largely they have assimilated in their host societies, and thereby this assimilation has led them to be a part of the political framework in those countries also. They hold political positions, right? And then the new diaspora. So generally it is a close to or post-independence. This movement is taking place close to or post-independence, right? This movement is taking place in the context of education and work opportunities. All right, education and work opportunities. Indians are going abroad for education and work opportunities. So this is basically the diaspora that again you will find mainly in the Anglo sphere, which is English speaking countries. So generally again UK, North America, meaning US and Canada, US and Canada. And then you also have, now if you see, Indians going to Australia and also to some extent in the European countries, European Union countries or European countries generally. So, और यूरोप से एक एग्जांपल आपके पास ऑलरेडी है यूके, बट ऑल्सो the other countries where Indians are increasing. For example, Italy, right? A lot of people from, for example, states like Punjab, Haryana are there in Italy. What are they doing? Working in the fields, right? So इस तरह का migration भी बढ़ रहा है और ये continuous diaspora है, right? This diaspora is static. Now you cannot create an old diaspora, right? This is static in terms of movement of people, flow of people. This is still being created. Still, large number of people are moving abroad, right? And then the Gulf diaspora. Again, it is post-independence, but we generally say that it emerged in the 1970s, right? Old diaspora is a phenomenon that generally emerged in 19th century, right? This is the phenomenon of 20th century continuing in 21st century. This is something that was created in 1970s in the context of oil boom. All right, oil boom, oil income rose in Gulf countries. Of course, economic activity picked up, so there was a high demand for labor, right? And India generally is a labor surplus country, so these kinds of locations are always attractive for us. So we went there, right? Large number of Indians, and we have already talked about it in the context of West Asia, where specifically GCC countries, Gulf Cooperation Council countries, where the major concentration. So there also you will find largest UAE and second largest Saudi Arabia. Large number of people are there. And of course, yes, here one region that we can add to the old diaspora is Africa, right? In Africa also you will find large number of Indian diaspora. So in this way, the origins of the diaspora, on the basis of origins of the diaspora, it is divided in three categories. Old diaspora, created by British colonial practices like indentured labor, when contractual labor was taken from India to work in different colonies of the Britishers. So that's why it is well spread out. Caribbean, South America, tip of South America, that is. Then you have places like Indian Ocean Islands, then you have places like Pacific Islands, Southeast Asia, Africa, you will find the old diaspora. New diaspora, people going out in search of better opportunities, educational opportunities, work opportunities. Specifically, for example, first to Commonwealth countries, then also to North America, right? So this has been a continuous movement, and this continues. Now, the feature of this new diaspora is that this is prosperous, right? This is economically prosperous. They are in technological leadership positions, right? Just as the old diaspora, the characteristics is prominent in political positions, the new diaspora is prominent in terms of technology and business leadership. Technology and business leadership, right? That's basically something that you will see with this diaspora, new diaspora, right? That's why the example of Rishi Sunak is another new example where an Indian origin person has become Prime Minister of UK, right? If you see, his parents migrated to Africa, and then from Africa he went to the UK. So it is sort of a mixed sort of diaspora lineage that we can talk about. But generally you will see most of the names that will come to your mind in the context of new diaspora are not political leaders, but leaders of companies, right? All the CEOs that we keep on talking about, Sundar Pichai to Satya Nadella, right? Many more. Now, this diaspora generally we saw constitutes of mostly blue collar workers, around 70% of blue collar workers. West Asia के केस में हमने देखा था ना, we have talked about it. So generally workers, but also in some cases like UAE entrepreneurs, right? For example, the founder of the Lulu Mall, right? Lulu Mall itself first was launched in UAE, right? In West Asia. So that is basically what you will see as its feature. Now, once we have classified the diaspora, we have understood how to describe the diaspora, where they are, what categories are there. The second question is, if we look at the same in terms of consolidated distribution, so you will find that Indian diaspora is globally distributed. One category or the other, you will find Indians on all corners of earth. दुनिया में कहीं भी जाओ, you will find Indians, right? So this means that they are globally distributed, but then there are 11 countries where the number is more than 1 million. So this is significant concentration. Countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, UK, US, Canada, Indians are more than 1 million, right? So more than 1 million Indians in 11 countries, and 21 countries are there. 21 countries are there where this number is more than 100,000, right? More than 100,000 Indians. So that's basically another way of very simply keeping in mind the distribution, that there is a global distribution. If you look at the geographic reach, दुनिया के कोने कोने में Indians हैं. Even in Antarctic you have Indians, right? Now in Arctic also you have Indians. Of course, the scientists, Indian scientists who are working there. So then in 11 countries 1 million, in 21 countries 100,000 Indians are there. चलिए अब इसके बारे में बात करते हैं. जो दूसरा क्वेश्चन है, व्हाट इज द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ दिस डायस्पोरा, राइट? व्हाट इज द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ द डायस्पोरा? सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ द डायस्पोरा क्या है भाई? इतना डायस्पोरा है. So the significance of the diaspora can be captured in terms like they are referred to as India's unofficial ambassadors, right? These are the kind of jargons which are used to describe the diaspora, that the Indian diaspora is considered to be its unofficial ambassadors. They have also been referred to as strategic assets. They act as strategic assets or strategic bridge between India and their own host societies. All right. Is there any difference between expatriate and diaspora? Expatriate is anyone who is living outside their country of birth, right? So that's basically understood that diaspora would subsume the term expatriate also, right? But diaspora has a long-term significance, long-term implication, right? Long-term meaning. Expatriate can be, you can be there for few days also, then also you are part of the expatriate community, but generally they are similar. ये जो क्वेश्चन है आपका, और एक्सपैट्रिएट वैसे भी कोई टेक्निकल कैटेगरी नहीं है, वो उन्हीं को रिफर करने के लिए यूज होता है जो बाहर रह रहे हैं, जो फॉरेनर हैं किसी भी देश में, राइट? अनऑफिशियल एम्बेसडर, स्ट्रेटेजिक असेट्स और स्ट्रेटेजिक ब्रिज, दैट इज द रेफरेंस टू द डायस्पोरा, right? In what sense? So first of all, they add to India's image by their contribution and work abroad, right? So when Indians are working, are known as hard workers, or are known as technologically proficient, well, it is adding to the image of India, that this is generally how Indians are. अब उनको पता नहीं है कि बाकी लोगों को हमने यहीं रख लिया है, ऑलराइट, और अपने अच्छे लोगों को भेज दिया है बाहर. अभी आओ तो तब पता चलेगा. Indians come in all shapes and sizes, but they add to India's image once you see that they are seen to be an important part of their societies wherever they are. Second, they advocate India's cause, all right, or lobby for India's interest. They advocate India's cause. For example, the most famous example here always is the role of Indian community in the Indo-US nuclear deal. The Indo-US nuclear deal. Indian community had created significant support for this particular deal. So that is the meaning of they advocate India's cause. They raise their voice, they raise their concerns on issues related with India. Then we can also say that they create familiarity with Indian culture. Example, the practice of celebration of Diwali in places like the US White House. If that is happening, then it means that, you know, this is basically a recognition of India's culture. So they create familiarity with Indian culture, right? So that's how also they are ambassadors of Indian culture. Then they contribute to the creation of network of knowledge and capital flow. All right, it means they contribute to the creation of network of knowledge and capital flow. समझ में आ रही किसी को बात? What is the meaning of this? The meaning is very simple. Anyone going outside inspires somebody to follow the footstep. Because पहली बार जब कोई गया तो उसको नहीं पता था कि टिकट कहाँ मिलेगा, how much money would be required. But second time when somebody is going, they have somebody to ask. So that is what happens, right? Somebody comes from their village to a city, and then others from the village also follow and go to the city. So that is basically creation of a network. It makes other migration easier, right? And then it means that that is one kind of knowledge, right? How to navigate in the world. Second is, if somebody is going, let's say, to get education in some university abroad, and then they come back and serve in India, so they are bringing that knowledge also with them. All right. So network of knowledge, flow of knowledge, capital. If they are earning outside and sending their money back, if they are earning outside and investing in India, that is also creating a network. There is a flow of investment, right? So this is basically what is happening. Whatever Indians are doing abroad, either they are scientists or business leaders, this is what they are doing. So that's basically where you can say they contribute to, the diaspora contributes to India's economy, all right, development. So you will see, for example, remittances is one example of this. So India is the highest recipient. India is the highest recipient of remittances. All right. So for example, recent figure is 87 billion US dollars, right? 87 billion US dollars of remittances sent by Indians. This is the highest remittance received by any country. And the other example would be, this is flow annually. This flows and this will keep on increasing. Around 125 billion US dollars of NRE deposit. NRE deposit of 125 billion US dollars in the banks. Their money which is here as a stock, right? So in both senses you can see that Indians are contributing to the cause of India, to the development of India. So this is India, the significance of the diaspora. All right, this is significance of the diaspora. NRE, non-resident deposit, जो non-resident Indians होते हैं उनको expectation that they would open a separate bank account. All right, because they would be remitting money from outside. So separate bank accounts are opened. So NRE deposits, these are NRI deposits in other sense, right? तो ये जो है RBI के हिसाब से अराउंड 125 बिलियन US डॉलर है इंडिया के अंदर. तो सिंपल सी बात है कि भाई दिस इज हाई अमाउंट ऑफ मनी, राइट, विच इज कमिंग फ्रॉम इंडियंस earning abroad. All right, would it be counted as export or import? Would it be counted as export or import? Import. This is export, na? The earning is in foreign currency. They are earning outside and they are, if our workers are going outside, this is an export, right? Because they would be repatriating the money back to India. हमारा पैसा नहीं लग रहा उतना, they are sending back money, right? So then the 125 billion US dollar of NRE tourism भी revenue जो हो रहा है, it is in a way export, all right? So that is what we are saying. So this is basically the evidence of why the diaspora is significant for India, right? Why is the diaspora significant? And add to another number that global distribution is there, but Indian diaspora is the largest in the world, all right? The size is around 31 million, all right? 31 million. This is the size of the diaspora. Indian diaspora 31 million in size, world's largest diaspora. इस पे हर साल एक रिपोर्ट आती है, right? So this is called the World Migration or International Migration Report, which is issued by an organization called International Organization for Migration, right? So this is basically what we generally know about the diaspora. बहुत ज़्यादा नंबर नहीं है ये, बहुत ज़्यादा याद नहीं करना, बट एक टॉपिक को कवर करने के लिए इम्पॉर्टेंट है, राइट? तो जैसे अगस्त का जो करंट अफेयर्स है ना, वो भी काफ़ी होगा, उसको संभाल के रख लेना. दैट वुड बी योर नोट्स फॉर डायस्पोरा, ईदर दिस और दैट, एनीथिंग. So first have that. Now what remains? What is it that we need to answer now? Take a break, right? Small break, and after the break what do we answer? क्या अगला क्वेश्चन है हमारा शुरू में जो हमने लिखे थे? We talked about what is the diaspora, what is its nature, distribution, significance. अब क्या बात करेंगे? India's engagement with the diaspora, right? So that is what we'll be doing. Take a break, and after that we will take up that issue. Okay, please come back. So Vishal had said the recent figure released 100 billion US dollar recipient received. तो मतलब रेमिटेंसेस को लेके एक और डेटा सेट हमारे पास है. वर्ल्ड बैंक का जो एक रिपोर्ट आती है उसमें द इंडिकेशन इज दैट बाय दिस ईयर, इस साल, अब ये नहीं कहेंगे कि रीसेंट डेटा रिलीज मतलब, लेकिन इस साल इंडिया इज सेट टू क्रॉस 100 बिलियन US डॉलर इन रेमिटेंसेस अकॉर्डिंग टू द वर्ल्ड बैंक, राइट? सो दैट इज समथिंग दैट यू शुड कीप इन माइंड, राइट? कि ये बढ़ता जा रहा है, जैसे मैंने कहा ये बढ़ता जा रहा है. दिस इज अ ग्रोइंग नंबर. सो वर्ल्ड बैंक डेटा ऑल्सो इंडिकेट्स, एज विशाल हैज टॉक्ड अबाउट, थैंक यू विशाल, that 100 billion US dollar of remittances. So again, this is part of the pattern that India already is leading, and this number is increasing, right? Now, the next thing about how India deals with its diaspora. So in this context, we simply need to understand India's engagement with the diaspora, India's engagement. Now, first of all, we can look at it in terms of three phases, right? Phase one, or immediately the post-independence phase. So here we can say that either the approach was one of benign neglect or non-interference in the issues related with the diaspora, right? So this is the initial period when India has become independent. The diaspora outside is also new. So either in India's view, the intervention of India would lead to problems in assimilation of this diaspora in their host communities. तो उनको दिक्कत आएगी, है ना? और दूसरा ये था कि it may also lead to the problem of dual loyalty, right? That if they are too closely associated with India, then of course जहाँ भी वो जा रहे, दुनिया हमेशा बहुत अच्छी नहीं थी. Racism was always the case. So whenever you are going outside, for example, यहाँ भी आप बहुत एक डायलॉग यूज करते हैं ना कि खाते यहाँ का है और गाते कहीं और का है. तो ये प्रॉब्लम कोई भी जो डायस्पोरा कम्युनिटी होती है उसके साथ हो सकता है, प्रॉब्लम ऑफ डुअल लॉयल्टी। ये इस तरह की बातें बहुत जिम्मेदारी के साथ करनी चाहिए, इसलिए लूजली नहीं. So that is basically what we see defines our approach post independence: benign neglect or non interference in view of the diaspora itself being new. All right, the process of immigration itself being new, the process of settling of this diaspora in their host societies also being new, right? They were just settling in their host societies, right? So any interference may have led to difficulties in the assimilation of the diaspora in their host societies. That was the view. And may also have raised the question of issue of dual loyalty. So that's why you will see generally neither the diaspora nor the government are very much engaged with each other, right? There is a benign neglect. Neither the diaspora nor the government also is in the position to do much about each other. So remember that migration always has been a process through which diaspora has been created, which has been beyond government control. It has not been controlled by the government. It has not been facilitated by the government. It is an independent flow that has taken place. So thereby, what you will see is that you have, for example, in the 1980s, the Immigration Act, meaning some laws around 1983, if I am not wrong, Immigration Act. You can double check the date. ये मैं पहले ऐसे आपको बोल रहा हूँ, double check कर सकते हैं आप date को. So 1980s you will see some laws like Immigration Act, right? So which basically organizes immigration, right? इस तरह का, या फिर intervention in the Uganda crisis in the 1970s, right? 1970s के अंदर Uganda crisis है. तो जनरली डायस्पोरा के से रिलेवेंट जो चीजें हैं वो या तो come in the context of these kinds of legislation, Immigration Act, or the attention goes to them when there is a large crisis like Uganda crisis, where what had happened was Uganda had seen change in power. You must have heard of Idi Amin. There is a movie called Last King of Scotland, right, which is about Idi Amin coming to power. And in many of these African societies, there was an anti-colonial sentiment, and Indians, since they had come with the Britishers and they had stayed on and they were part of the economy, they were the business people, they were the shopkeepers. So there was a resentment against the Indians which developed in the aftermath of the Britishers having left, where many in Africa blamed the Indians or saw the Indians as part of the exploitation, right? So that was a misplaced view. Indians had worked hard, made their position in their society, but rulers like Idi Amin, for example, moved towards what they believed was indigenization of the economy, right? So जैसे insider outsider debate होता है इंडिया के अंदर भी वैसे. So Idi Amin then took a drastic step. So he ordered Indians to leave Uganda in 90 days, right? अब आप कई सालों से वहां रह रहे हैं and you are suddenly asked to leave Uganda in 90 days. So that was the crisis, right? So in that, you will see some role of government in terms of Indian diplomats facilitating this particular process. But then again, you will not see a large role. So Indian diaspora का जो recognition है, जो याद आती है, वो इस तरह के समय पे आती है. Meaning बहुत कम limited interactions हैं. दूसरा हम कह सकते हैं post liberalization, right? Post liberalization. ऑल राइट. और इसी पीरियड में देखोगे एक और चीज जो है वो है फॉर एग्जाम्पल दी एयरलिफ्ट, जिसपे अक्षय कुमार साहब ने फिल्म बना दी, गल्फ वॉर, राइट, अराउंड 1990 एंड 1991, इस पीरियड के अंदर. सो यू विल सी क्राइसिस of this sort reminds us that there is a large Indian diaspora which expects assistance from India, or which India should assist. So post-liberalization, what you would see again, circumstances have changed. So what circumstances have changed? Just as we saw post-independence, both India is more internally focused, internal consolidation, and the immigrants are focused on जहाँ भी गए हैं वहाँ settle हो जाएं, उस पे उनका focus है. So this is the time where India is changing. So India requires external assistance in its economic process, technology, investment. And the diaspora, especially the new diaspora, now by this time has settled down, right? They have acquired education, they have acquired prosperity, and they have acquired leadership position in areas like technology. So diaspora is in a position to contribute to India, right? So there is a need in India for external assistance. India is opening for this, and diaspora is in a position to contribute to India's cause. So in that context, you will see engagements, right, happen. For example, India opens up, needs external assistance. This is the context. And the diaspora has acquired prosperity wherever they are, and they are in a position, to contribute. They are in a position to contribute, right? So this basically is a balanced equation where there is a need, there is also capability. So that's why you will see here the diaspora engagement start opening up, right? So you have, for example, the government of India issuing NRI bonds, like, for example, the Resurgent India bonds. All right, हर जगह मसाला बॉन्ड नहीं आएगा. Resurgent India bonds, right, for NRIs to subscribe. तो इस तरह की चीज हो रही है. फिर in the 1990s you have initiatives like PIO card. पैसा चाहिए तो भाई facilitate. Also PIO card, basically when it came, it was for 15 years. So it was a 15-year visa category. 15 years, right? So if you yourself, your parents or your grandparents, if you can prove your lineage to India through these, if you were Indian citizen, your parents were Indian citizens, or your grandparents were Indian citizens, not great grandparents in this case, so then you can apply for PIO card, which would have allowed you for a 15-year status. 15 years. So PIO cards used to be valid for 15 years, right? So ये इस तरह के cards आए, PIO card in the 1990s. Then you will see such developments continue, and then since this engagement increases, then greater understanding is also required. So there is a high level committee which is created under Dr. L.M. Singhvi. All right, an empowered group is created under Dr. L.M. Singhvi, and this L.M. Singhvi committee presents a report in this particular period, right? It talks about where the diaspora is, it talks about what is their status, what are their expectations, what are their problems. So this is basically an era of awareness, and this then, for example, leads to the creation of, in 2004, around 2004, a new ministry, Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs. All right, Overseas Indian Affairs एक नई ministry बनती है, right? So there is a greater focus now on diasporic engagement. Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs. Same period, you see 2003 is the beginning of celebrations like Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. All right, Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. These kinds of engagements start, right? Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. And this is the period in which you will also see now OCI cards are issued. So this is a longer term facility now. A PIO card 15 years, OCI card. A, first of all, it allows you to trace your lineage to India through your parents, grandparents and great grandparents. B, it is lifelong. It does not basically, it is not limited to 15 years. C, now in this case, this is also available to any foreigner who is married to an OCI, right? So if you are married to an OCI, you can also become an OCI, right? For that, you don't need to prove your lineage to India. You can be a foreigner out and out, married to an OCI. So that also facilitates your gaining the OCI card. So OCI card आता है इस समय again to ease engagement with the diaspora. And then we can say the third, which we call the recent period. So recent period has seen building on these initiatives. Diaspora engagements continue, and here we have new momentum. So what has facilitated this new momentum? For example, use of social media and technology. Use of social media and technology has made it easier. पहले कोई बाहर जा रहा है अपने देश से, so the only medium of contact would be letters, right? And then of course, even in India, I don't know whether you have seen that time or not, whether when there was no internet, but people like us have seen the time when there was no internet and then internet came. When there was landline also used to be issued by, बहुत मुश्किल से लगता था. For example, if you have an MP quota, right, you will get the landline easily, but पूरे मोहल्ले में एक landline होगा and people will come. आपका फोन, आपके फोन पे किसी और का फोन आ रहा है, फिर आप बुला के लाएंगे किसी को कि आपका फोन आया हुआ है. And then from that to mobile phone, and then from mobile phone to now myriad kinds of devices. So you will see that when this happens, of course, it would affect engagement. So social media use of technology has made diaspora engagement easier. So there is more active diaspora engagement with the help of social media and technology. Secondly, you will see public gatherings, large public gatherings on foreign visits of the PM. ये एक फीचर देखने को मिलता है ये भाई, greater publicity, greater visibility of diaspora engagement. For example, Howdy Modi in Houston, Texas, 2019. Houston, Texas के अंदर एक इवेंट हुआ हाउडी मोदी इन अ स्टेडियम. इंडियंस आर कमिंग. न्यूयॉर्क में हुआ, लंदन में हुआ, राइट. सो ये बेसिकली एक और फीचर आपको दिखता है. तो ग्रेटर विजिबिलिटी है, बिल्डिंग on the developments of the past decades. And then you will see in this period you have merger of PIO with OCI cards, right, in the time period of 2015 to 2017. 2015 is what it was announced. 2017 it was completed. These cards have been merged. You will also see, for example, some other changes which have come up. What kind of changes which have come up? So for example, change in the format of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Change in the format. 2015 onwards, change was made. So here the main Pravasi Bharatiya Divas conference is now supposed to take place every 2 years outside Delhi, right? Any city outside Delhi would host the main Prabasi Bharatiya Divas conference every 2 years. And in the intervening years, what would happen? In the intervening years, what would happen is a outcome based PBD, Pravasi Bharatiya Divas conference should be organized, right? So ये थोड़ा change इस format में हुआ, right? That Pravasi Bharatiya Divas should be hosted. So for example, 2017 Pravasi Bharatiya Divas happened or was hosted in Bangalore. 2019 Varanasi. All right, 2019 Varanasi. 2021 नहीं हुआ, COVID-19 online था सब कुछ, right? So that is the change. Intervening years, for example, 2018 India hosted PIO Parliamentarian Conference. right? So more than 200 people of Indian origin in different positions of political leadership participated in this, right? MPs or mayors, these kinds of people. So that is basically what you will see has happened in recent times. And then you have the CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act. अब सिटीजनशिप अमेंडमेंट एक्ट में बहुत सारी चीजें हुई, तो उसमें एक चीज और भी हुई. सो यूपीएससी एस्पिरेंट शुड रीड थिंग्स कंप्लीटली, राइट? OCI category was modified. So it means that now, for example, the government can revoke the OCI category. Earlier, no such provision was there. So your OCI category can be revoked if you violate certain laws. All right. So for example, IPC के कुछ provisions और crime कोई commit करते हैं आप. So on these kinds of basis, OCI category can be taken away by the government, which happened with Atish Tasir, the son of journalist Tavleen Singh, right, who was criticizing the government, and then suddenly her son, her OCI status was taken away. Kyun? Because he is also the son of a former Pakistani politician. His father held a British passport, he also held a British passport. So ये कहा गया कि भाई ये बताया नहीं इन्होंने कि ये पाकिस्तानी है, तो उनका कहना है कि भाई हम तो पाकिस्तानी नहीं है because we have held a British passport. But then changes were made in the OCI category whereby violation of laws, violation of IPC provisions may lead to revocation of the OCI card status. ये provision नहीं था, अब ये provision है. तो इस तरह के changes भी हुए हैं OCI category के अंदर review करने का provision. तो जनरली हम देखते हैं कि दिस इज बेसिकली हाउ वी हैव डेल्ट विद द डायस्पोरा. दिस इज हाउ द डायस्पोरा एंगेजमेंट हैज इवॉल्व्ड फ्रॉम फेज टू फेज. व्हेन इज प्रवासी भारतीय दिवस सेलिब्रेटेड? व्हाट डे? 15 जनवरी. मकर संक्रांति नहीं पूछ रहा हूं, नॉट आस्किंग अबाउट पोंगल और मकर संक्रांति. 9th January. All right, 9th January, because this was the day in 1915 when Mahatma Gandhi returned back to India. That's why Pravasi Bharatiya Divas on 9th of January. 9th of January, right? Second, there are also terms used called Girmitiya. Girmitiya is a reference to people who went away as indentured labor, right? So that's why you will see that this is an expression. Girmitiya is an expression used for people of old diaspora, right? Girmitiya. Now, this is basically how diaspora engagement has evolved. So what next we need to look at is what are the provisions for diaspora that you should be aware of. पहला मैं सजेस्ट करूंगा आपको अगस्त का करंट अफेयर्स देखना, उसके अंदर लिस्ट है बहुत लंबी, but I will also note it down for you so that you understand that what kind of schemes are there. So for example, we have schemes like No India program. All right, No India program, and within that you also have No India quiz. All right, No India quiz. So basically No India program is facilitating tour in small groups of younger generation of Indian diaspora. All right. So फर्स्ट जनरेशन तक तो कल्चरल एंगेजमेंट रहता है. सेकंड जनरेशन जो वहां पे पैदा हुआ वैसा ही बोलेगा, राइट? वैसे ही बात करेगा, मतलब they are Americans for all purposes. So creating awareness about India, about their roots. No India program, right? Then, for example, you have the Vajra scheme, and there are other schemes also. Vajra scheme for returning साइंटिस्ट. वैसे जनरली लोग इसलिए नहीं लौटना चाहते because they find working atmosphere outside to be better than in India. In India, you have to deal with a lot of things, right? Caste, office politics, political interference. So generally scientists जो वहाँ जाते हैं वो यहाँ नहीं आना चाहते, but we want them to come back and we are incentivizing them to set up their labs, right? So that's basically Vajra scheme for returning scientists, right? Then you have schemes which have been put in place recently, which is Pravasi Kaushal Vikas योजना, ऑल राइट, प्रवासी कौशल विकास योजना भी है, जो कि फॉर स्किलिंग ऑफ वर्कर्स हु आर गोइंग अब्रॉड. देन पीएम ग्लोबल एडवाइजरी council, right, which has been there since 2000 and it was created in 2008, so that people from diaspora in prominent leadership position economically, scientifically, can provide their advice for India's development. All right. So this is PM Global Advisory Council is also another scheme. Then you have a schemes like workers resource centers or community welfare fund, community welfare fund at all the missions and posts of India, right, to ensure the welfare. Worker resource center generally in places like Sharjah, Dubai, where Indians can come back. Also at Kuala Lumpur, Indians can come and register their complaint. Walk-in facility, call center facility, community welfare fund, monetary facility at missions and posts of India, which can be used for the welfare of workers, right? Then you have use of portals like Madad portal. All right, Madad portal. Madad portal is for lodging of complaints, right? Lodging of complaints. If you can lodge your complaint online. And then there is an e-migrate system which has been put in place. All right, e-migrate system, meaning this is a portal where the employers are supposed to register, right, employers abroad who are employing Indians. Specifically ये किसके लिए? ये है for immigration clearance required countries, meaning workers in the category of unskilled workers. उनके लिए, उनके employment के लिए अगर है तो उनका नंबर जानने के लिए e-migrate system. And then referral wages system. All right. So this is basically all for either allowing the people to lodge their complaint or registering the numbers, the kind of activities in which Indians are involved, the companies who are employing them, and referral wages system to basically ensure that basic minimum wages are provided to Indians, can be ensured, right? These kinds of initiatives have been put in place in recent times. And then there are many more. As I said, go and look at the box of the current affairs of the month of August, right? ये आप करेंगे. अब इसके अलावा, now what we see is that the committee generally has given certain recommendations. What kind of recommendations? So committee has said that a government needs to make efforts for creating a diaspora database. तो पहला तो प्रॉब्लम क्या है, किस चीज का है? नंबर. ऑल राइट, दैट नंबर्स should be the effort, right? Government should be making an effort that numbers are there for those who are migrating. Generally, this is where the lacuna is, that we don't have real-time numbers of most categories. We have numbers in some categories. For example, your passport, you will see there is an ECR category and there is an ECNR category. जब आप पासपोर्ट का फॉर्म भरोगे, उसी में एक टिक लगाना होता है ECR, ECNR. ECR इमिग्रेशन क्लियरेंस रिक्वायर्ड, मतलब ये होता है जब यू आर डिटरमिन टू बी अ नॉन स्किल्ड वर्कर, राइट? और जो स्किल्ड वर्कर्स है उनके लिए ECNR, इमिग्रेशन क्लियरेंस नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. सो ECR कैटेगरी वी हैव डेटा, ECR category workers who are going outside we have data, but rest data is dispersed, right? We can't say that there is no data, but the data is dispersed. It is not readily available. आप कहीं जानना चाहें real time basis पे, so you don't have that data. So that is something that would help us. And then grievance redressal के लिए follow up and action on grievances. All right, follow up and action on grievances, that is required. So we have been putting in place various facilities for grievances to be recorded, but then there has to be a follow up and also reporting on how many grievances were redressed. So we have number of grievances being registered increasing, but we need to follow them up, and we need to first of all ensure that grievances are action on grievances is ensured, grievances are redressed, right? So this is basically what the diaspora, this is what basically the committee mainly is saying should happen, right? Now in general, let's simply talk about challenges that can affect India's diaspora or diasporic engagement of India. What challenges are there? So generally by now you have seen the world, we have traveled the world, you know what kind of issues can be there. So diaspora, the challenges to diaspora may come from local and regional conflicts, right? Local and regional conflicts. Kahin danga ho gaya. For example, 2021, there were riots in South Africa because its president was removed. Current president के खिलाफ भी अभी problem चल रहा है. So riots broke out, and cities like Durban, where Indians are in large number, was targeted. So in that case, Indians in South Africa were vulnerable to the local violence. Regional conflict. You see Ukraine-Russia crisis. One of the first things that India did was what? And one of the main things that India has done, evacuation of nearly 21,000 people of India. Not only India, but also foreigners, some of the foreigners. So this is evacuation because conflict broke out where Indians were studying, medical students or engineering students, right? So that's basically where you will see can be the effect. For example, current Ukraine crisis, or for example, in West Asia, this possibility is always there, right? Then local policy changes that may also affect Indians. What kind of policy changes? For example, Nitakat in West Asia. All right, Nitakat, Arabization. ये बात की थी ना हमने when we talked about the people in West Asia. So when that happens, Nitakat means Saudi Arabia wants to increase the number of its nationals in employment. उनके लिए रोजगार बढ़ाना चाहता है. So obviously Indians are the largest expatriate community. It may affect their work opportunities. So local policy changes. ये हो या as you said H1B visa, if US changes its visa norms. So those difficulties would also be there, right? Or let's say यहाँ पे आप कर लें visa related issues. For example, with US, the issue is long waiting period right now for visa, right? So local policy changes. Then you also have, for example, not issues of idea. So rising nationalism, all right, protectionism, where especially in the West, right? Rising nationalism and protectionism. So nationalism means that you are focusing on your own interests. If everybody starts doing that, you understand that the most vulnerable community would be the migrants, all right? Because they would easily be targeted by insider-outsider debate, right? That they are responsible for lack of employment here, right? In America, many people say that. So of course this would mean, for example, this nationalism, protectionism, if it rises, it may lead to local policy changes like Nitakat, like immigration reforms in the US. So that would close the doors for Indians. That's the problem. We are going to be moving population for the longest time, but that may close the doors for us. Now this, along with this, there is another possibility. If this happens, a Donald Trump gives a speech, right? Donald Trump gave such a speech that American people ran over the US Congress, 6 January 2021. So if that can happen, you understand, people follow their leaders. So if somebody is saying that Indians and Chinese are responsible for we not getting job, then somebody on the ground would understand that it is allowed to beat or kill, right, Indians because of that. Anyone. So this is basically what we say, rise of xenophobia or racial hate crimes, right? So this is again another threat. One is a threat to their opportunities, another is a threat to their liberty and their safety. For example, we keep on hearing reports, unfortunate reports of Indian engineers being killed in, for example, a few years back, an engineer from Andhra Pradesh was stabbed and killed in US. All right, he was just walking. An old man in US was pushed on the ground. अभी सोशल मीडिया के ज़माने में आप कई बार देखते हैं, गुस्सा करने के बहुत सारे कारण है. सोशल मीडिया can provide you all of them. All right, if you want to be angry, then you can use the social media. So you see the reports on how Indians were abused. Why are you here? Go back, right? You dirty Indians, etc., etc. So this is basically what is the reference to xenophobia or racial hate crimes, physical crimes or verbal assaults on Indians. Most serious would be whenever there is a news that an Indian has been killed or beaten up. Australia में हुआ, US में हुआ, UK में हुआ. So that is basically what would be a threat to Indians. Then you have a transformation in technology. When technology is changing, and because of that, changes in the nature of. Now this is also a significant debate of our times, nature of work. You can see everywhere the implication of this. Technology is changing. What kind of changes is it bringing about in the economy? And then what kind of changes is it bringing in the nature of work? अगर ऐसा आप नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं तो आप थोड़ा और समय दो यूपीएससी प्रिपरेशन को. अभी आप तैयार नहीं हो, बिकॉज यू हैव नॉट सफिशिएंटली ऑब्जर्व व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. आपके दिमाग में एक गोल है आईएएस बनने का, पर अभी आपने थोड़ी तैयारी और करनी है. So technology is changing. What may happen whenever technology changes? जैसे world history. So you may have heard of Luddites. सुना है आपने? The Luddites. World history पढ़ी है आपने? NCERT पढ़ी है आपने? इंडस्ट्रियल रिवोल्यूशन को लेके एक रिएक्शन था. वो क्या रिएक्शन था? People destroyed factories. Yes, Luddites जिनको कहते हैं. So they were protesting against what? Not against technology, but how technology had affected their work. राइट. सो ये हर जनरेशन की प्रॉब्लम है. अगर आप नहीं समझ पा रहे हैं तो समझने की जरूरत है. व्हेन कंप्यूटर्स केम, फॉर एग्जांपल, राइट, कंप्यूटर रेवोल्यूशन एज वी से केम. सो जनरली व्हाट वाज द ट्रेडिशनल आर्गुमेंट? दैट दे वुड, कंप्यूटर रोटी पकाएगा क्या, ये लोगों ने पूछा. दूसरा ये था कि इट वुड लीड टू लॉस ऑफ जॉब्स, जो मैनुअल जॉब होता है. दूसरा, एनीवेयर इन इकोनॉमी इफ यू इन्फ्यूज टेक्नोलॉजी, राइट. सो बेसिकली टेक्नोलॉजी कैसे यूज होता है? जनरली फॉर रिड्यूसिंग द कॉस्ट ऑफ लेबर, राइट. तो ये इकोनॉमिक सेंस होता है. सो दैट्स व्हाई यू हैव automation, machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics. These are newer areas of technology which are changing the nature of the work. So it may have multiple effects. For example, many of the IT jobs which were aspired for in the last decade are no longer relevant because those skills are no longer required. So there would be retrenchment in the IT industry, right? Then you will see, for example, people like Elon Musk are firing people, right? ये क्यों हो रहा है? Because he thinks that ये इतना काम करने के लिए इतने लोगों की जरूरत नहीं है, right? This work does not require so many people. So that is what is happening. And then you will see, if you see domestically, वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट गिग इकोनॉमी. बहुत सारी चीजों के बारे में बहुत फैशनेबली हम बात करते हैं. गिग इकोनॉमी इज राइजिंग. गिग इकोनॉमी इज नॉट गोइंग टू बी एज इजी, राइट? दैट्स व्हाई ऑल ऑफ यू would like to have sarkari jobs, right? One thing which has not changed is, and I have no value judgment on this, acha ya bura, I'm simply saying that there is a preference for sarkari job, because the gig economy would always ask you to compete, struggle. सरकारी जॉब में एक बार लग गई नौकरी तो कोई आपको नौकरी से निकालेगा नहीं, तनख्वाह मिलेगी, पेंशन मिलेगी. बट द वर्ल्ड इज चेंजिंग, राइट? द वर्ल्ड इज चेंजिंग, राइट? सो डोमेस्टिकली यू मे टॉक अबाउट गिग इकोनॉमी, right? Or how the nature of job is going to become contractual and more temporary, skill based. You have to sell your skills. तो आज अगर ये हो रहा है तो what is Indian diaspora made of? What is Indian diaspora made of? Indian diaspora is made of workers, labor, any kind, right? This is a migration of labor which is going in search of work, workers who are going in search of work. So any such change would affect Indians. For example, one possibility is that if Indian educational system can create technologically proficient individuals, Indians would be leading, right, in the world. But it may also happen that many from the old generation may become redundant. Many of the older software engineers may become redundant, right? You would have layoffs in Noida, you would have layoffs in Gurugram. That is the nature of global economy. Economy अब अलग अलग नहीं रहेगी, right? It follows the global trend. So that is basically what we are saying. In domestic, suppose मान लो बाहर कोई इंडियन काम कर रहा है, लार्ज नंबर में इंडियंस जा रहे हैं, and locals are losing job because they somehow did not catch up with technology, and Indians are taking up that job. So then what would happen? Then generally social issues would arise, right? Where the locals would blame Indians for taking their jobs, right? So whatever happens, in many ways, it is one factor that would affect the future of Indians, technology and changes in the nature of work, right? And then of course now add a new factor. Increasingly, our analysis is moving away from traditional analysis. So we say factors like climate change, conflict and COVID, right? ये बड़ा फैशनेबल हो गया, ये 3C: climate change, conflict, COVID, meaning pandemic. These are global disruptions. So for example, when COVID happened, what happened? Closure of productive activities, and thereby you will see a lot of Indians had to return from countries like Gulf countries, right? A lot of Indians were stuck because it is a moving population. अब वहाँ की इकोनॉमी भी बंद है, आप भी आ नहीं सकते, ट्रैवल नहीं कर सकते, right? So then that's where you will see a lot of effort went into what? Vande Bharat mission, which is evacuation of Indians in the context of COVID-19. So this can easily be understood. Conflict का तो example आप समझ गए, Ukraine. Again, we have to lift people. Operation Ganga, or for example, Afghanistan, Operation Devi Shakti. For example, in Yemen, 2015, Operation Rahat. All right. So these are disruptions which may cause long-term changes. For example, climate change for sure is going to cause long-term changes because it is also pushing technological changes, if you see, right? It is pushing the changes in the economy that we are seeing. So it has multiple effects. Conflicts, regular feature of international relations, can break out anywhere, as we see, right? And COVID-19, contagion, right? COVID-19 होने का मतलब ये नहीं है कि this was the end of it. It only has made us aware of the possibility of how climate change would lead to mutation, right? Or climatic conditions where diseases would spread. And these diseases, since the globe is interconnected, these diseases would increasingly spread at a global level, right? So these are the challenges that we need to keep in mind. So what are the solutions? First of all, many of the solutions are very simple. Engagement with the relevant governments, right? So for example, if there are policy changes, if you want to negotiate the interests of Indians, you have to engage with governments where this change is happening, right? What kind of engagement? Generally bilateral. All right, bilateral engagement with the relevant governments. If there are attacks on Indians, So of course law and order is the responsibility of that government. So in that case also you need to engage with that government. Policy issues or issues related with violence against Indians, engage with the government. Second, as we have seen, proactive planning for disruptive events and possibilities, right? So for example, in issues like rehabilitation of returning वर्कर्स वापस आए, बड़ी संख्या में वर्कर्स वापस आ सकते हैं, तो उनको कैसे सेटल करेंगे? रिहैबिलिटेशन ऑफ रिटर्निंग वर्कर्स, इसके लिए प्लानिंग चाहिए. दूसरा, इसी के साथ व्हाट वी नीड इज कोऑपरेशन between center and states on the same issue, right? Where would the worker return back? So societies like Kerala, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, where you have large number of people who are in the diaspora, so there these people would return back. So states have to be involved in their management, cooperation between center and state. Then we need to work on strategic evacuation policy, because one thing we are very sure, that one of the first responses that India has in conflict situation is to evacuate its citizens. We have evacuated from Iraq and Gulf countries 1990. We evacuated from Yemen 2015 in what is called Operation Rahat. We evacuated in Ukraine. So we will need to evacuate our citizens. So rather than preparing for every case basis, we already have the experience. We now need to have a strategic evacuation policy, right? Evacuation of Indians from conflict situation. Then measure for skilling, reskilling and upskilling. Skilling, reskilling and upskilling of immigrants, right? Either the workers who are non-skilled or semi-skilled, teach them soft skills, sorry, thank you, linguistic skills, just as Philippines does, right? Make them aware of their rights, make them aware of the method. ये सारे schemes होते हैं, scheme बहुत खूबसूरत schemes होती हैं, but the problem is the people don't know how to use it, right? So that's the basic problem generally you will see. Even in domestic case, you may have a lot of schemes, but people need to be capable of uptaking them, using them. ये आपका काम है as officers also, that would be your work. Scheme तो है, आप कितना जनता को उसका लाभ दिला पाएंगे, that is basically what your work is. So schemes are there. Now you need to ensure that there is awareness, but also when workers are returning, when there is a chance that nature of work would change, reskilling is required in today's environment. You need to reskill. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक डिग्री ले ली लाइफ में वो जिंदगी भर काम करती रहेगी. You need to constantly aspire to learn new skills. This is unfortunately the nature of the economy. Upskilling, of course, you need to not only learn new skills, but you need to advance in your skill domain because of technological innovation which are happening, right? So that is basically, पहले हम पढ़ाते थे white board पे, फिर हम पढ़ा रहे हैं smart board पे. I find it very difficult, right? I find it difficult to use technology. But if this is the case today, then this would increasingly be the case tomorrow, and workers would have to be skilled, reskilled, upskilled. उसके लिए government का एक plan होना चाहिए. This is where you will see things are happening, and add the suggestions of the, as I said, suggestions of the committee, which was numbers and follow up of grievance redressal, right? इसके अलावा जो भी आपके दिमाग में आए आप सोच सकते हैं, right? You can think about it. This is where we have ended the discussion on the diaspora. अब इसमें आप क्या ऐड करेंगे, मैं आपको बताता हूं क्या ऐड करेंगे. जब भी अखबार पढ़ते रहो, ऋषि सुनक became prime minister. What is this an example of? Indians acquiring position of leadership. But you are aware, for example, UK में हमने बात की 1.6% of the population, 6% of GDP contribution. समझ में आ गई बात? यानी कि एरिया वाइज जब भी कोई न्यूज आती है वहां से वो चीजें नोट कर लो, राइट? सो इन यूएस मोर देन 4 मिलियन पीपल ऑफ इंडियन ओरिजिन, 25% यूएस में जब हमने बात की थी 25% ओनरशिप ऑफ स्टार्टअप्स इन सिलिकॉन वैली, लीडरशिप ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट पोजीशन ये है इंडिया में, यूएस में कमला हैरिस एंड अदर पॉलिटिकल पर्सनालिटीज. कनाडा में जस्टिन ट्रूडो कैबिनेट, 4 कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर्स, राइट? You would see even current politics in Canada, you will see people of Indian origin being part of the major party which is there or the opposition party. So these kinds of things. अब ये notice करके आपको अपने value addition करना है. Static factors, basic factors we have already talked about. Value addition ही होगा. Africa, how many Indians are there? 3 million Indians all across Africa. 1 million in South Africa. All right, 1 million in South Africa. 100,000 in places like Kenya. वो भी हमने देखा नंबर, राइट? अगर कोई न्यूज आता है इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ इंडियंस, यू क्विकली नोटिस इट, राइट? साउथ ईस्ट एशिया, 2 million Indians or people of Indian origin in Myanmar, 8% of population in Singapore, 9% of population in Malaysia. Significant minority. In Singapore, for example, the current external affairs minister, which is Vivian Balakrishnan, is of Indian origin. ये नोट करना है आपको, ये नोटिस करते रहना है, राइट? फॉर एग्जाम्पल FATF का करंट चेयरमैन कौन है? टी राजा कुमार. ऑल राइट, टी राजा कुमार, द करंट चेयरमैन ऑफ FATF. एंड Singapore had 3 presidents of Indian origin in the past, right? 3 presidents of Indian origin. Mauritius, Pravind Jagannath is the prime minister, but also have been Naveen Kumar Ram Gulam. All right. So 60% of population of Mauritius is Indian origin. 60% Indian origin. Political leadership, right? Similarly, Guyana, Suriname, right? Mohammad Irfan in Guyana as the president, Indian origin. And Suriname, Chandrika Prasad Santokhi. All right, Chandrika Prasad Santokhi in Suriname is of Indian origin, right? Similarly, kahin pe bhi ho, Portugal, if you see Portuguese Prime Minister António Costa, António Costa is of Indian origin, Goan origin. All right, António Costa, Portuguese Prime Minister. Similarly, you see UK के बारे में तो बात कर ली, UK में अभी ऋषि सुनक प्लस सुएला फर्नांडिस इज ऑल्सो ऑफ इंडियन ओरिजिन, जिन्होंने कहा कि इंडियन स्टे फॉर द लॉन्गेस्ट. सुएला फर्नांडिस. आलोक शर्मा, हु वाज द चेयर ऑफ COP26, आलोक शर्मा, चेयर ऑफ COP26, ही वाज आल्सो ऑफ इंडियन ओरिजिन, राइट? ये नोट करना है आपको. एंड दिस गिव्स यू एन एग्जांपल कि हाउ इंडियंस आर प्लेइंग अ लीडिंग रोल, बिकॉज 2020 UPSC asked in Europe and America, Indian diaspora has to play an important economic and political role. ये आंसर होता है examples से, with the help of examples, right? So Ireland, the last prime minister, previous prime minister of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, right? Leo Varadkar, also of Indian origin, Goan Maharashtrian origin, right? He was the first openly gay prime minister of Ireland also, and also of Indian origin. Similarly, Shapurji Palonji Mistry passed away recently. He had shifted to Ireland. He was the richest man of Ireland, of Indian origin. तो जब अखबार पढ़ रहे होगे, so when you read something like this, you from UPSC perspective, एक तो हो गया कि ऋषि सुनक बन गया, अब तो कोहिनूर ले आएंगे, ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा, एक तो वो हो गया. दूसरा ये हो गया, you clearly think that this is an example of how Indian diaspora is becoming visible. All right, political role, इकोनॉमिक रोल, कोई नासा का साइंटिस्ट का नाम आ गया तो उसका मतलब ये नहीं कि वो केवल अपनी पीठ थपथपाने के लिए कि वो है तो इसका मतलब आप भी वहां पे हैं. नहीं नहीं, वही है. दे हैड वर्क हार्ड. इफ दे आर इंडियन, दैट शोज साइंटिफिक कैपेबिलिटी, साइंटिफिक लीडरशिप. right? So reading newspaper then becomes a fun exercise because you know that you have to use these points somewhere or the other, right? And then later on, this is my dream, that just as the Europeans came and colonized us indirectly, we also go and colonize West indirectly. Not colonize. Colonize का exploitative मतलब होता है colonize नहीं, अपना लेते हैं हम West को. All right? Let's embrace the West by moving there in large numbers. Let's send 40 crore of our people slowly, gradually. अभी 30 million है हम, 40 crore of our people, बस 40 crore to other countries, right? US वैसे भी most of them they don't want to work, all right? They want cheap labor, but they don't want to give them rights. So of course we are willing to work. We Indians would work. We will go there, right? Whatever you need, engineers, plumbers, drivers, IT professionals. If you need prime minister also, we can provide that service also. So by 2049, India should be the largest diaspora, and we should be, for example, अभी 11 देशों में 1 million है. So that number should go to at least a 50, and ideally we should be in a decisive position politically in most of the countries. This is my dream, that we should reverse colonize the West. तो उन्होंने हमें धोखे से जीता और ताकत से जीता, हम उनको प्यार से जीतेंगे और सेवा से जीतेंगे, right? But we will work there, we will go there, and then before the world realizes, Indians would be everywhere, right? दुनिया को डोमिनेट करने का प्लान है. चलिए 1 मिनट. शाश्वत कहता है, does the recent comment by EM Jaishankar on members of Quad do not endorse my map, forget about my issues, will affect the influence of Quad in. First of all, इतना लंबा जजमेंट नहीं करना चाहिए. ये सिंपली आपको दिखाता है within Quad there is commonality of interest and views, but there is also difference, right? That's what it talks about. And the future of Quad relies on reducing the differences and increasing the commonalities. That is what you should look at it as. एक स्टेटमेंट से ऐसा नहीं होता कि इसकी वैल्यू कम हो गई. हम हर जगह जा रहे हैं. हमारा मतलब देखो ऑल अलाइनमेंट, मतलब अब हम हर क्लब का मेंबर बनना चाहते हैं. एक और टर्म बोलता हूं मैं. So earlier India was part of the trade union but not part of the management, right? When we became independent, we were a poor country, so we decided to create solidarity among the people who are like us, third world solidarity, and we fought with the West. हर जगह UN में हर जगह पे. They don't like us in any ways. अभी भी नहीं पसंद करते क्योंकि हम हर जगह बहुत negotiate करते हैं. So now what the difference is that we are in a position where we would be part of both the labor union, trade union, but also the management. So India is now going in that phase where India would be part of both management. So we would have friends in the West, but we would also be part of the trade union. So we would also have friends in the South. So that is what we should be looking at. हर जगह पे हम जब जहाँ जाएंगे तो जैसे साउथ वाले कहेंगे कि तुम्हारे तो ज़्यादा अच्छे संबंध उससे अमेरिका से, so उनको भी प्रॉब्लम होगी because we are not exactly now least developed country. तो कुछ हमारे इंटरेस्ट वेस्ट के साथ है, कुछ हमारे इंटरेस्ट साउथ के साथ है. तो ऐसे इसको देखना है. What is Airlift? Airlift is a movie by Akshay Kumar, but it is reference to how during the Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait, a war broke out in the Gulf region and Indians were working there in large numbers. So India then evacuated its citizens, which was one of the biggest exercise of its kind. Air India flew multiple flights to airlift the Indians, right? चलिए, so we will stop here for today, and the one thing that is remaining is organizations. We have not started that. So since you have the possibility of another class, we will take another class. But remember, generally organization is prepared through current affairs. जो हम discuss करते रहते हैं, current affairs से basically होता है. तो एक class और लेंगे. Somebody has asked for my email ID. So this is my email ID if you want to write. anjani.kumar@visionis.in. Right, this is my email ID if you want to write, if I can be of any assistance. Right, Amartya, I have already answered your question. right? Not just don't think India of leader of global South. We are a country which is a member of both the trade union, labor union, as well as the management. So think of in these terms कि हम सबसे दोस्ती करना चाहते हैं, और जब हम सबसे दोस्ती करना चाहेंगे तो होगा ये कि there would also be differences. All right, so that is what it is. Thank you very much. Go back and enjoy your lives, but more importantly, एक काम करना, previous years questions देख लेना. In 2012, UPSC asked a question on diaspora, difference between new and old diaspora. 2017, UPSC asked a question, contribution of Indians to Southeast Asia. 2020-21, UPSC asked a question, role of Indian diaspora in America and Europe. एक बार देखना और आंसर करना. अगस्त का करंट अफेयर्स भी देखना है आपको, ठीक है? थैंक यू वेरी मच, जा सकते हैं आप.